Hey Storystream fam. Before we dive into part 2, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who watched part 1 and came back for more. Your support, comments, and crazy good theories mean the world. If you're new here, welcome, you're just in time for the real twists to begin. Let's get into it. The Weight of Innocence. Part 2, Beneath the Surface. It had been a week since Evelyn had come to visit me. A week since her words had begun to fester in my mind, each repetition like a slow burn under my skin. She said I'd been framed. She said someone was making sure I took the fall for something I didn't do. But what if she was wrong? What if I really was guilty? The more I thought about it, the more I felt the weight of the evidence against me. My fingerprints on the murder scene. Blood on my clothes. Surveillance footage showing me entering Peter Granger's apartment building. Every piece of the puzzle seemed to point to one thing. I was guilty. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The police had continued their relentless questioning, trying to get me to crack, to admit something I had no memory of. But I held strong. They wanted me to believe I was guilty, but I couldn't do it. Not yet. There had to be something I was missing. I sat in my cell now, the sterile fluorescent light casting shadows on the walls. It felt like I was in a dream, or maybe a nightmare. The days blurred together, and I was losing track of time. Then the door to my cell opened, and I looked up in surprise. Detective Andrews stepped inside, his face still as hard as ever, but this time there was something different in his eyes. A flicker of uncertainty, a hint of frustration. "I need you to come with me," he said, his voice clipped. I hesitated but followed him, my mind racing. What now? What did he want? We walked down the narrow hallway to a small room. I had been in this room before, but this time something was different. There were papers scattered on the table, and a computer screen displaying a map. Andrews motioned for me to sit down. "I've been reviewing the case again," he said, pulling out a chair for himself. "And I found something interesting." I sat across from him, my heart hammering. "What is it?" He clicked the mouse, and a map of the city appeared on the screen. It was marked with several locations, but one stood out to me. It was a park, several miles away from Peter Granger's apartment building. I didn't recognize the name of the park, but there was something nagging at me. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Andrews turned the screen toward me. "It's a place you visited last week. The night before Peter was found dead. We've got surveillance footage of you walking through the park." I blinked in disbelief. That doesn't make sense. I don't remember being there. I don't even know that park. "That's the thing," Andrews said, his voice low. "You didn't just walk through it. You were seen meeting someone there. Someone we haven't been able to identify." My stomach twisted. "Who?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he scrolled through a series of blurry images on the computer. A figure stood in the shadows, their face obscured by a hat and scarf. They were standing next to me in the footage, but I couldn't make out any details. "Who is that?" I asked again, my voice trembling. "We're still trying to figure that out," Andrews said, clicking off the screen. "But the fact that you were there, in the park, meeting someone you don't even remember? That's strange, Lena." I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. I had no memory of this meeting, but I couldn't deny the evidence in front of me. The park. The figure. Why hadn't I remembered any of it? "I don't remember," I whispered, more to myself than to Andrews. "I don't know who I was meeting. I don't know why I was there." Andrews studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "We'll keep looking into this. But this only makes things worse for you. If you're truly innocent, why can't you remember any of it? Why were you meeting someone in secret?" I shook my head, tears threatening to spill over. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. All I know is that I didn't kill Peter. I didn't do it." Andrews didn't say anything. He just stared at me, as if trying to figure out whether I was telling the truth or not. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I could feel the weight of his doubt, pressing down on me. Finally, he stood up, pushing the chair back with a scrape. "I'll let you think about it, Lena. But don't forget, we're watching you. We're getting closer." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the crushing weight of the new revelation. A meeting in the park. A figure I couldn't identify. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing. Things were only getting more complicated, and I was no closer to finding the truth. The hours in my cell stretched on, each moment a test of my patience and my sanity. Detective Andrews' visit had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. The surveillance footage of me in the park, meeting with someone I couldn't even remember, it was all too much. Who was that person? And why couldn't I recall it? I kept running the scene in my head, playing it over and over. The park. The figure. My steps through the trees, the cold night air, the vague feeling of unease that I couldn't place. But no matter how many times I tried to force the memories to come back, they remained locked away, beyond my reach. I needed answers. But where was I supposed to start? I had nothing but a blurry image and a nameless figure. The more I tried to connect the dots, the more they seemed to scatter, each piece slipping further out of my grasp. The door to my cell opened again, and I looked up, half expecting it to be Andrews returning with more questions. But this time, it wasn't him. It was the same woman who had visited me before. Evelyn. I hadn't seen her in days, and I wasn't sure if I should feel relief or suspicion. She had told me that she was trying to help, but I still didn't know exactly who she was or what she wanted. Could I trust her? Could I afford not to? Lena, she said softly, her eyes scanning the room as she stepped inside. How are you holding up? I didn't know how to answer that. How could I possibly be okay when everything around me felt like it was crumbling? I don't know, I admitted, my voice strained. I'm trying to make sense of everything, but it's not getting any easier. Evelyn nodded as though she understood, her expression serious. That's what they want. To confuse you. To make you second-guess yourself until you break. But I'm here to help you get your bearings. I straightened in my seat. You said I was framed. How do you know that? How do you know I didn't do this? Evelyn's gaze softened, but there was a steeliness to it that gave me a little comfort. Because I've been watching the case closely. I've seen the pieces of the puzzle, and I know what you're up against. This isn't just about you, Lena. It's bigger than that. Whoever did this to you, they've set you up, manipulated you into this position, and I'm going to help you find out why. Her words were a lifeline, but at the same time, they filled me with doubt. Was I really being set up? Or was I simply denying the truth because I couldn't accept what I might have done? Why should I trust you? I asked, my voice low. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your motives are. Evelyn hesitated, her eyes meeting mine with a quiet intensity. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. But I can give you something the police won't. I can help you see things from a different perspective. I stared at her, the doubt in my mind warring with a growing sense of desperation. What other choice did I have? The police had closed in on me. Andrews was determined to prove my guilt, and my memory was still a blank canvas. Evelyn might be the only person who had even a sliver of an idea about what was really going on. I'm listening, I said finally. Evelyn took a deep breath. There are things about Peter Granger's death that don't add up. The police are fixated on you because of the evidence they have, but they haven't looked at the bigger picture. They haven't connected the dots. I have. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. My heart began to race. What do you mean? What dots? Peter Granger wasn't just an innocent bystander. He was involved in something that went far beyond a simple murder. He had enemies. Lena. Powerful ones. And somehow, you're caught in the middle of it. I could feel the weight of her words settling on me, like a stone pressing against my chest. Peter had been involved in something dangerous? I couldn't reconcile that with the version of him I remembered. He had always seemed so ordinary, so normal. But maybe I hadn't known him as well as I thought. How do you know this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled a small folder from her bag and slid it across the table toward me. I've been doing some digging. I think this is the key to understanding what happened. Look through it. It's everything I've found about Peter's connections. I took the folder, my hands trembling. It was thin, but it felt heavy with secrets. I opened it carefully, scanning the pages inside. There were photos, grainy ones of Peter talking to different people I didn't recognize. There were names and addresses, some crossed out in red ink. And there was one name that stood out, Adrian Blackwell. The name meant nothing to me, but Evelyn's face had gone pale as she watched me read. You need to find him, she said quietly. He's the key. And I believe he's the one who can tell you the truth about everything. But be careful. Whoever did this to you is watching. They won't let you go that easily. My pulse quickened. I had no idea who Adrian Blackwell was, but something told me that finding him might be the only way to unravel the mess my life had become. I couldn't stop thinking about Adrian Blackwell. Evelyn had said he was the key, and as much as I wanted to believe her, something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. Who was Adrian? Why hadn't the police found him already? And why did I feel so uneasy just looking at the name? I stared at the papers Evelyn had given me, the photos of Peter and the unknown figures blurred by time. The name Adrian Blackwell seemed out of place, like a forgotten note in the margins of a story I wasn't a part of. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that finding him was the only way to find the truth. The days passed, and each one seemed to weigh heavier on me than the last. Detective Andrews hadn't been to see me again, and I could tell that the investigation was closing in. The pressure was mounting, and I couldn't ignore the gnawing sensation that I was running out of time. "Do you think you'll find him?" I asked Evelyn when she came back to visit me the next day. She had been silent for most of the morning, and I could tell she was worried. She didn't respond immediately, her fingers tracing the edges of the file on the table. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "I'm not sure. Adrian Blackwell's a ghost, Lena. The police haven't been able to track him down, and every lead I've followed has turned up nothing." "But you've been looking for him, right?" I asked, a little desperate. The thought of Adrian slipping away, of the truth remaining just out of reach, filled me with panic. "I have," Evelyn said, nodding. "But the problem is, no one seems to know who he is. There's no clear record of him. It's like he doesn't exist." I leaned forward, my hands shaking. "That doesn't make sense. He has to exist. He has to be real." "I agree," she said. "And that's why I need you to help me. I think you might know something that could point us in the right direction." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean? How could I possibly help? You've been in Peter's life, Lena. You knew him better than anyone. What if Adrian isn't just a name on a paper? What if he's someone you've already met?" I froze. The idea was absurd, but as I thought about it, a flicker of recognition stirred deep inside me. Adrian Blackwell. The name was so ordinary, yet somehow it felt familiar. I'd heard it somewhere before, or perhaps I'd heard something close to it. "I don't understand," I said, my voice small. "How could I have met him?" Evelyn's eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I saw a hint of doubt in her gaze. "I don't know, Lena. But I think you should start thinking about the people you've crossed paths with in the past. You might not remember everything, but something will come back to you. The truth is in there, buried deep." The words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. I had no idea where to begin. My memory of Peter's life, our relationship, was shattered, like a mirror that had been broken into 1,000 pieces. I had no idea who Adrian Blackwell was, but Evelyn was right about one thing. If I had met him, I would have to start remembering. "I'll try," I whispered, more to myself than to her. I had to. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "I know you will. And while you're doing that, I'll keep digging. We need to find Adrian, Lena. He might be the one who can prove you're innocent." I nodded slowly, but deep inside, I couldn't shake the unease gnawing at me. The more I thought about Adrian, the less I felt like I could trust my own memory. What if I had known him? What if he had been part of my life in ways I didn't even understand? As Evelyn left, I sat in the cold, sterile room, staring at the empty file in front of me. There was something about Adrian Blackwell that felt off, something about the way his name echoed in my mind like an unfinished song. I didn't know where to begin searching for him, but I knew one thing. If I didn't find him soon, I might lose whatever chance I had at proving my innocence. But the truth was slipping further away, just out of my reach. I couldn't sleep. The name Adrian Blackwell continued to haunt me, his shadow lurking in every corner of my thoughts. Evelyn's visit had stirred something deep inside me, but the more I tried to think back, the more I came up empty. I couldn't remember meeting Adrian. I couldn't remember anything that would explain why his name felt so familiar. The memory was elusive, like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. Every time I thought I had it, it slipped away. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What if Evelyn was wrong? What if Adrian Blackwell wasn't part of my life after all? The idea that I might be chasing ghosts was terrifying. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that if I didn't follow this lead, I would be left with nothing. The truth was, I had no choice but to keep pushing forward. If Adrian held the key, then I had to find him. I couldn't let the uncertainty destroy me. I pushed myself to my feet and walked over to the small window of my cell. The night was quiet, the world beyond seemingly still, but inside, everything felt like it was slowly unraveling. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, trying to calm my racing heart. Then a thought struck me, as sudden as a thunderclap. What if Adrian wasn't a stranger at all? What if I had known him, and I just couldn't remember? What if the answers were locked away in the corners of my mind, waiting for the right trigger to unlock them? I didn't know how I'd find that trigger, but I was going to try. I had no other option. I had to find Adrian, or else I'd never know if I was truly innocent or if I was, in fact, the killer. The clock on the wall ticked, each second feeling like an eternity. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. The next few days were a blur of uncertainty and frustration. Every waking moment was spent searching my memory, trying to pull together the fragmented pieces of my past. I couldn't stop thinking about Adrian Blackwell. Who was he? What did he mean to me? And how did he fit into this twisted puzzle? Evelyn had been quiet in her last visit, but her words lingered in my mind. Think about the people you've crossed paths with in the past. It wasn't just a suggestion, it felt like a plea. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. I had been around a lot of people, many of whom I'd forgotten about, or perhaps never fully understood. The feeling of having been in the dark for so long began to gnaw at me. There were people I had brushed off, insignificant faces that had been a part of my life for only moments, but could one of them be the key? Adrian Blackwell could be just another name on a list of forgotten faces, or he could be the one person who had seen the truth when no one else did. I needed to focus. It wasn't just Adrian who I had to think about. It was Peter, too. How could I not remember the most important person in my life? The guilt in my chest twisted like a knot, tight and unforgiving. Had I known Peter? Had we been closer than I realized? I couldn't ignore the fact that Peter's death had somehow drawn a line through my life, separating me from everything familiar. I sat in the dim light of my cell, the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the corridor. I had to pull myself together. Time was running out. The police weren't going to wait for me to have some grand revelation. They were counting on my fear to crack me open, to make me confess to something I didn't do. But I couldn't give in to that pressure. With a deep breath, I stood up and began to pace the small room. What if Evelyn was right? What if Adrian Blackwell was the link I had been missing? I had no memory of him, but could that be the answer? Could the truth really be so simple, locked away in my own mind, waiting for me to remember? I couldn't be the only one searching for answers. The police were closing in, but I had to believe that there was someone out there who could help me. Someone who knew more than they were letting on. The thought of asking for help, of trusting someone else to guide me, terrified me. I had been alone in this nightmare for so long, I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. But I had no choice. I couldn't do this alone. And then, just as quickly as the thought crossed my mind, a memory stirred, faint, like a whisper on the wind. It was of a conversation. A moment. And in the haze of it, a name surfaced. Adrian Blackwell. It wasn't much, but it was something. I needed to follow this thread. Whatever it was a sign. I grabbed the folder Evelyn had given me earlier, flipping through the pages again, searching for anything that could make the name stick. Adrian Blackwell. I had to find out who he was, no matter what it took. And this time, I wasn't going to let myself be distracted by the noise, the endless distractions, the doubts, the guilt. I was going to focus. I was going to uncover the truth, one piece at a time. And somewhere in the darkness, I would find the light. The next few days passed in a haze. I couldn't stop turning over the name Adrian Blackwell in my mind. I would wake up, exhausted from fitful sleep, and the first thought that would surface was Adrian. Who was he? Why couldn't I remember him? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I knew about my own life. Even the most mundane details, the people I interacted with, the places I went, felt like they belonged to someone else. I kept asking myself if I was really as innocent as I believed. If I couldn't even trust my own memories, what else could be true? I had to try harder. I had to find a way to remember. Evelyn hadn't come by since her last visit, and I found myself missing her calm, steady presence. She was the only person who believed in me, and without her, the silence of the cell seemed even more oppressive. But I couldn't afford to dwell on that. I had to do something, anything, to find Adrian Blackwell. The police weren't going to wait for me to remember on my own. They were still building their case against me. Andrews had been cold and distant, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was waiting for me to crack under pressure. I couldn't let that happen. I spent hours sitting at the table, flipping through the folder Evelyn had given me. I studied every photo, every name, every address. Nothing made sense. The more I searched, the more I felt like I was missing something critical. It wasn't just about Adrian. It was about everything that had led me here. Why had I been targeted? What did Peter's death have to do with me? Then, as I scanned a particular page, something caught my eye. It was a blurry photo of Peter standing with a group of people, none of whom I recognized. But there was one person who stood out. A man in the background, partially obscured by shadows. His face was unclear, but I knew with a sickening certainty that it was Adrian Blackwell. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the photo for a long time, my pulse quickening. This was it. The man who could hold the answers. But why had I never seen him before? Why had I never remembered him? The questions piled up, but they didn't matter right now. What mattered was that I had a lead. A real one. I couldn't waste any more time. I had to find out everything I could about Adrian Blackwell, and I had to do it quickly. The walls were closing in, and I knew that the longer I waited, the harder it would be to prove my innocence. The police would make their move soon. I had to beat them to it. With a determined breath, I stood and grabbed the folder, clutching it tightly to my chest. It was time to take control of my fate. I had always prided myself on being a woman of action. I wasn't someone to sit idly by when I had a goal, and finding Adrian Blackwell had become my sole mission. But now that I had a face, a blurry, half-formed image of him, I was left with more questions than answers. How had he become so entwined with Peter's death? What role had he played in my life, and why had I forgotten him? The photo of Adrian haunted me, the outline of his features too blurred to identify but impossible to dismiss. I couldn't stop staring at it, wishing for some kind of clarity to break through the fog in my mind. My memory felt like a cracked mirror, shards scattered all around me, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't piece them together. I was trapped in a cycle. Every day, I replayed the events over and over in my mind, looking for a clue, anything to make sense of what had happened. But nothing came. Not the park, not the people, not Adrian. It was as if I had been erased from my own life, a ghost in my own memories. I needed more than just a blurry picture and a name. I needed to understand who Adrian was, why I had crossed paths with him. Why was his name written into the margins of my life, like some dark secret I couldn't remember? The cell felt more oppressive than usual as I paced back and forth. The weight of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. And yet, I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for the police to make their next move. Andrews had been distant, watching me like a hawk, waiting for me to break. But if I could prove that Adrian was the key, maybe I could escape the web they had spun around me. I grabbed the folder again, flipping through the pages, looking for any clue that might help me understand the connection between Peter and Adrian. But it was no use. There was no address for Adrian Blackwell, no clear lead. Just that one photo, blurry and indistinct. I needed to talk to someone who might know more. But who could I trust? Evelyn had been my only ally, and I hadn't heard from her in days. She had promised to keep digging, but what if she was getting closer to something I wasn't prepared for? What if she had found more information, something that would finally pull everything into focus? I was starting to feel like I was losing control. The only thing I was certain of was that I couldn't keep spinning in circles. I had to break free from this maze of confusion and lies. I remembered the night of Peter's death. The cold, the darkness, the strange feeling that something was wrong. But beyond that, there was a deep, unsettling emptiness. I couldn't recall the details, but I knew one thing for certain. I had been there. I had seen something. Something important. I just couldn't put the pieces together. A knock on the door startled me, breaking the spiral of my thoughts. I froze, my heart racing. Was it Andrews? Or someone else, someone who might know something about Adrian? The door creaked open, and a familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Evelyn. My chest tightened with relief and unease. I hadn't seen her in what felt like ages, and I had no idea what she had discovered in the meantime. She stepped into the room, a slight frown on her face. The moment she closed the door behind her, she locked eyes with me. "I've been looking into Adrian Blackwell," she said quietly, her voice serious. "And I found something. Something that might change everything." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "What is it? Tell me." Evelyn hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the file in my hands before she met my eyes again. "It's not much, but I think I found a lead on his whereabouts. There's a place, an old warehouse near the docks. It's not far from where Peter was last seen." My heart pounded in my chest. A warehouse. It seemed so insignificant, so ordinary, but Evelyn wouldn't have brought it up unless it meant something. "What's there? What did you find?" "There's a chance Adrian is involved with something big, something that connects him to Peter," she said, her voice low. I don't know what yet, but I'm going to find out. I need your help, Lena. I need you to go with me. I felt a wave of dizziness pass over me. My mind was racing, trying to process everything at once. A warehouse. Was this the piece I had been missing? Could Adrian really be hiding there? And if I actually followed this lead, what would that mean for me? For the case? I don't know, I stammered, uncertainty lacing my words. I can't just leave. I can't risk being caught. You won't be caught, Evelyn assured me, her voice firm. But we don't have much time. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to prove your innocence. I felt torn. On one hand, this could be my chance to finally uncover the truth. But on the other, it felt like I was stepping into something far bigger than I could handle. I stared at Evelyn, seeing the determination in her eyes, and I knew I had no choice. This was my moment. If I didn't take it, I would be stuck in this prison of doubt forever. I'll do it, I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could second-guess myself. I'll go with you. Let's find Adrian. Evelyn nodded, a brief smile touching her lips. But I could see the weight of the situation in her eyes. We were walking into dangerous territory, and we had no idea what we would find there. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was taking control of my fate. It was time to unravel the past, piece by piece, and I was finally ready to face whatever was waiting for me. The night air was cold as we stood outside the warehouse, the dim light of the moon casting long shadows across the crumbling concrete. Evelyn and I had arrived quietly, careful to avoid drawing attention to ourselves. The city was asleep, or so it seemed, but I knew better than to assume we were truly alone. Danger had a way of lingering in the quietest places. Are you sure about this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I glanced over at Evelyn, the determination on her face matching the unease gnawing at my stomach. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't, she replied, her tone steady but edged with an intensity one hadn't seen before. We're close, Lena. I can feel it. I nodded, trying to push away the fear curling in my chest. We had come this far, there was no turning back now. The warehouse loomed ahead, its doors heavy and uninviting, as if guarding secrets no one was meant to uncover. My heart raced in time with each step we took toward it. We'd scouted the area for nearly an hour, making sure there were no obvious signs of life. No cars parked nearby, no flickers of light in the windows. It felt eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. I couldn't help but feel as though something was waiting, something I couldn't see but could sense, like the pull of gravity, drawing me closer to something I wasn't prepared for. This is it, Evelyn murmured, pausing in front of the large, rusted doors. Her hand hovered over the latch, but she hesitated. Are you sure we're not being watched? I asked, scanning the surroundings one more time, but I saw nothing. No movement, no shadows lurking in the corners. I've checked, she said, finally turning the latch and pushing the door open. We're alone. Let's go. We stepped into the dim interior, the smell of rust and decay filling my nose as the door creaked shut behind us. The space was cavernous, a vast expanse of metal beams and concrete floors, with crates and broken machinery scattered throughout. It felt like a place that had been abandoned for years, and yet, the sense that something had recently disturbed the silence gnawed at me. I was about to say something when Evelyn held up her hand, signaling for me to stay quiet. She was listening, her eyes narrowing as if she could hear something I couldn't. Then, without a word, she began to move toward the far end of the warehouse, her steps measured and cautious. My own footsteps echoed too loudly in the stillness as I followed. Each one felt like it was drawing attention to us, but I pressed on. There was no turning back now. We had to find whatever it was that had brought us here. Evelyn stopped abruptly in front of a large crate, crouching down to inspect something on the ground. I joined her, heart pounding in my chest. The shadows seemed to close in around us, and the air felt thick with tension. Do you see this? Evelyn whispered. She gestured to something etched into the floor, a faint outline, barely visible under the dust and grime. It was a symbol, a strange design I couldn't recognize. I bent down, running my fingers over it, the jagged lines cold under my touch. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, an intricate pattern, like a marking, something deliberate. This is it, Evelyn said quietly. This symbol, it's connected to Adrian. My mind raced. Adrian Blackwell, Peter's death, this warehouse, it was all coming together, but what did it mean? Why was this symbol here? And why had no one else seen it? Suddenly, a noise behind us made us both freeze. My heart skipped a beat as a figure stepped out of the shadows, tall and imposing. I couldn't see his face at first, but I knew in my bones that this was no coincidence. Evelyn, the man's voice cut through the stillness like a blade. I didn't think you'd be here. Evelyn stood up quickly, her body tense, but she didn't back down. I had to see for myself, Adrian. I gasped, stepping back, the pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. Adrian Blackwell. The man in the shadows, the figure who had eluded me for so long. But now, standing before me, he was more than just a name. He was the one who held the answers. And for the first time, I felt like I might finally learn the truth. And that's the end of part 2 of The Weight of Innocence. If you're as hooked as we are, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss part 3 when it drops. Got thoughts or theories? Drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think really happened. And if you want bonus content in a shorter form like Reels, please give us a follow on Instagram at Storystream. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the last part of The Weight of Innocence.